Rocky Patel Toro Maduro for my celebration tonight of my anniversary of my 1-year anniversary of my emancipation from Humana. I mean, that evil corporation I work for. Camera just shut off, so it's probably definitely going to be a two-parter. I'll end up putting these in the humidor in just a bit. A couple things I want to talk about. Cigars 101 Silver Eagle hit on a few things that I definitely want to talk about. Barack H. Obama has been talking with Raul Castro, and of course Sean Hannity, dumbass, has been criticizing Barack Obama for talking. And believe me, I'm not a big Barack Obama fan. One of my favorite movies is that Alex Jones film, The Obama Deception. And call me a conspiracy theorist if you wish. I believe it's all true. But Sean Hannity criticized Obama for talking to our enemies. How are you going to make friends with anybody, especially your enemies, if you don't talk? Is it better, Sean Hannity, to sit and stay enemies with these people? Now, what I wanted to talk about mainly was what is going to happen in the cigar world when Cuban cigars are legally available in this country. I want you to know Cuban cigars are being smoked in this country every day, in every state, by congressmen, by senators, by people who are allowed to go to Cuba during the embargo, under the rules of the embargo, and they could bring back a box. And also some were shipped in illegally. But here's what I think will happen. Back in the 90s, around 98, 97, we had what was called a cigar boom. And what happened during that boom was, oh, by the way, let me show you something else. That's the new La Gloria Cubana cigar, the Miami version that Ernesto's been working on for quite a few years. What happened during the cigar boom, you had your regular smokers. And all of a sudden you had a bunch of young people, me at the time, I was 40, started smoking cigars. Because, for one reason or another, some because it was cool, some because it was the next big fad, some because they had been wanting to smoke cigars for years and they've always liked the smell of cigars, because when they were younger, as a musician going into pawn shops and they'd see that pawnbroker smoking that big fat stogie and loving that smell, that aroma of that cigar, that they wanted to smoke cigars, and decided when they were 40, I had learned enough about cigars to start smoking. I think what will happen once the embargo is open, there will be another cigar boom. Because, and let there be no mistake, Cuba cigars are not all Cuban tobacco. They had started to import their tobaccos from Dominican Republic, from Nicaragua, from Honduras, because a lot of their crop had been wiped out at one point. And some of the cigars, if you can get some of the older ones, some of the ones from the 90s and the 80s, those are excellent, excellent Cuban cigars. I think the boom, another boom will happen. And for a while, possibly, the cost of Cuban cigars will go up. There are places that, hopefully, that still exist when this happens, if the embargo is lifted, and you will be able to get some good Cuban cigars mailed directly to your home from some of these sites, as they are being done now, but of course legally, and the price won't go up. There's a couple that have really good prices, and I'm not going to mention the websites, but there are some that are really, really good prices. But the majority of Cuban cigars are shipped to Spain, but the majority of Cuban cigars are smoked by Americans. So I think there'll be some big cigar booms. But I was afraid that it might happen, but I honestly don't think it'll happen, that people like Mr. Rocky Patel I don't think people like Mr. Rocky Patel will have to worry that his cigars are going to go by the wayside in replacement with Cuban cigars. Because Mr. Rocky Patel, you make some of the best cigars on the market. Ernesto Perez Carrilla, you make some of the best cigars on the market. And I've told you that once on the telephone, that you make the best Maduro wrapper around. Manny Quesada, you make some of the best damn cigars on the planet. Mr. Padron, you make some of the best cigars that I've ever smoked. That being said, if the embargo is lifted and Cuban cigars are then sold in American stores or over the internet and legally can be smoked in this country, I definitely will stock up on some Cuban cigars. But I will not forget my La Glorias, my Casa Magnas, my Padrones, and my Rocky Patels, and my American Stogies, because I like a variety. And most cigar smokers today likes a variety of cigars. I prefer Maduro, but like this La Gloria, that's a natural wrapper. It's a great cigar. I go for taste. This is right now the closest you can get to a Cuban cigar in this country is that new La Gloria Miami. What I think will happen though, you'll have people who've always wanted to smoke a Cuban and they've never smoked a Cuban in their life who will go and buy Cuban cigars to smoke. You'll have the old-timers who will stick to their certified bonds and their eyeballs and things like that, and who won't even touch a Cuban unless their grandkid buys it for them. And you'll have people who already get their Cuban cigars via the internet or stuck underneath a suitcase in the back seat of their car coming across the Canadian border. And you'll have the same people still buying their Dominican, Nicaraguan, Honduran cigars. I think it's going to be a great thing. There's nothing like diversity. What Castro wanted to do with the cigar industry when he became dictator of Cuba was to nationalize all cigars, and they were all going to be the same thing. Even he realized it couldn't work that way. And that's why you had H. Upmans, Partagas, La Glorias, and all the different brands coming from Cuba independently being made the way they're supposed to be made. Of course, a lot of the original families fled Cuba, and that's why, you know, you got Partagas, you got the Fuentes, you got Padrones being made every place else now, and the La Glorias, which is great. You know, years ago, cigar world was Tampa, Florida, or Havana, Cuba. Now it's everywhere. I think cigar smoking will have a little boom. Prices may go up a tad, but just think, the government will have more tobacco to tax, won't they? But anyway, I hope the embargo is lifted. You need to make friends with your enemies if you can. If you can't, then leave them the hell alone. Don't turn your back on them because they'll stab you in the back. You can't just tell your enemies, I don't want to fight. But I have a totally different theory about how wars are started and why wars are started. We'll go into that some other time. But for right now, Smoking Cigars with Howlinblind, my 1-year anniversary of my emancipation from that evil corporation in Humana. Smoking tonight my Padron 1926 #2 Maduro, and I'm going to smoke a nicely matured, aged Rocky Patel Toro Maduro that had lots of plume on it, and I think this cigar is just going to be a knockout. Some of the guys who smoked them down at the shop today were raving over them. So let's keep the cigar world going on, folks, and go from there. You smoking cigars with Howlinblind, Muddy Slim.